About 3 years ago, the Supreme Court heard the Dobbs decision. That was the case that upended Roe v. Wade, essentially said that the right to an abortion did not exist in the Constitution for everybody. Since then, there have been a lot of state battles, but the most important Supreme Court case on the pregnancy health movement since Dobbs is about to be heard. We're going to talk about it and how you can pray for it today. Join us. Well, we want to welcome everybody into a very important edition of our Passion Life video blog today. I think we have a discussion that's going to be, it's going to be important for everybody who's watching because, in effect, it could affect everyone who is watching today in some way, shape, or form. I'm joined again, as usual, by John Ensor, president of Passion Life. John, happy to have you with us today.
Good to be with you again, Mark.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be talking today a little bit about this upcoming Supreme Court case that has to do with pregnancy help centers. And so we want to just kind of back off for everybody today, talk a little bit about what pregnancy help centers are, what the accusations or the allegations are at the center of this case, why it's important and why it affects everybody who has an interest in the pro-life movement in general. So those are some of the subjects we want to cover today.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah, maybe we could start out, John, by having you describe a little bit about what the pregnancy help movement is and why pregnancy help centers are, or these help centers, the one that's being attacked in New Jersey specifically, what it is that these things do and why they're being attacked.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so the pro-life movement is a broad term that really has several major pieces to it, okay? There's more of the political piece that works on things like the elections and education of individuals to get them to vote for the proper candidates that reflect our values as people who believe in the Constitution and the idea that all human beings are created equal and have equal values and have equal rights.
Yep.
There is the state level of all of that action as well, and even local levels. And then there's what I would call the prophetic wing. The first one I call the kingly section. Okay, the prophetic section are those organizations or individuals who really go out and try to expose the truth of abortion. It's graphic, it's ugly, it's horrifying, but that's how a lot of social evils are overcome over time, is only by exposure. For example, that's how slavery was ultimately ended. The slave trade was only ended when the horrors of it were actually graphically shown to the leaders of the country.
Then so can you give us an example? If I could stop you there, could you give us an example of that prophetic wing? What does it look like in today's?
Well, William Wilberforce in England, he took a lot of the officials of the government and made them actually go down and walk through a slave ship and see the chains and to see and to feel viscerally the smell of these boats that were involved in the slave trade. And it was so revulsive to the people. A lot of them started throwing up, and I mean, it's just horrifying. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of evils that can only be overcome by exposure, as the Apostle Paul mentioned.
So would you put movies like Unplanned and what would constitute that prophetic wing of the pregnancy help movement today as an example?
I think those who stand outside abortion businesses with some of the graphic signs, or some of the university campus interactions in which they will show graphic signs. They usually are quite emotional, and they bring out a very emotional response, sort of like the prophets. They engendered a lot of hatred, but their messaging. That's why I call them the prophetic wing, because they're not touchy-feely, and they expose the truth of abortion in ways that create a visceral reaction to them.
They jar people.
Yeah, they do.
By design.
And I don't make any judgments about them. I think that there's a need for a prophetic wing in our movement.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But I think the leading edge of our movement is what I call the pastoral wing of our movement, which is churches, Christians, individuals organizing to directly intervene and help women who are in a pregnancy-related crisis. And that leads you to the development of pregnancy help clinics, or sometimes they're referred to as pregnancy resource centers or clinics. Mm-hmm. So there's different language, but basically they are places that are created to provide free intervening services for women who are being pushed or pressured or tempted into abortion to find a life-affirming solution. That's what they are.
That's right.
And there are about 2,700 of these pregnancy help clinics across the United States. There are probably also, when you add in pregnancy or maternity homes and other related ministries, there's probably about 3,000 pregnancy help community resources that have been started over the last 40 to 50 years.
And a lot of our viewers will be familiar with those as kind of their local pregnancy help center that their church may support or that they may pray for on a regular basis as a church.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's right. And the first one started in the late 60s and have just continued to grow. That's why I call it a movement, because it's so inspiring that if we're going to live out this commandment to rescue those who are being led away to the slaughter, the organized way of doing that is to start a pregnancy help clinic. And I started 6 of them up in the Boston area starting in the early 90s. I helped launch what is now 5 pregnancy help centers, medical clinics in Miami. I helped some people in Pittsburgh open one in the inner city of Pittsburgh and another one in LA. So we do this all over the world now, you and me, Mark. We were doing it in India. We're doing it in China. We're doing it in Vietnam in different ways, but they're all intervention services. What brings us to this topic today is the Supreme Court case that's being heard this week, and we won't really know what the result is until next spring. But this is a very, very important case, and I just wanted to update everybody on what the case is. And again, to clarify, well, what are the accusations? And what is a pregnancy center? And what do they do there? And why should we support them?
Yeah, I've heard this described as probably the most significant legislation on the pro-life movement since the Dobbs decision that freed us from the Roe v. Wade
That's right.
a few years ago, 3-4 years ago.
If we lose this case, it will most likely lead to mass closures of pregnancy help clinics. And that will be a great victory for people like Elizabeth Warren, who back in 2022, she actually called for a nationwide closure of all pregnancy resource or pregnancy help centers on the basis that she accused them of fraud or of deception merely because they refused to encourage or recommend or provide abortion-related services, as if you should be able to sue the Ford company because they're not recommending Chevys to everybody or any enterprise.
Right.
They have fundamentally decided that anybody who's not pro-abortion is an illegitimate medical provider, which would mean that hospitals that are Catholic hospitals aren't really legitimate hospitals, and they should be closed because they're not providing medical service.
Walk us through kind of the basics of this particular case. I know that some of it gets into some technicalities that are going to be beyond the scope of this particular presentation, but why don't you walk us through kind of the basics of what's going on?
Okay. So in New Jersey, the Attorney General there, as has been done in California and Illinois and New York, has attacked the pregnancy centers there under the banner that they are deceiving women. And then what they did, what the Attorney General did is he issued a very broad subpoena demanding all the donor-related information of a completely nonprofit donor-supported organization with records going back 10 years. We want the names and the addresses and the amount of everybody who's ever supported your services. That's what they did. And they didn't have any evidence of any fraud. They made the claim that there was fraud, and then they went looking for the evidence. So the subpoena was to find the evidence.
The evidence of wrongdoing.
That's right. So the First Choice Pregnancy Resource Center refused to provide this information. And they filed a lawsuit then against the Attorney General. And now the Supreme Court has decided that they would be willing to hear the case. Now, the technical case is whether a federal lawsuit challenging a subpoena issued by a state attorney general is justiciable, which is a funny word, but it means subject to a trial in a court of law. So basically, the whole battle comes down to whether or not the Attorney General's accusations and demand for information needs to be complied with when there's been no trial over the issues. And if they lose this case, if the pregnancy center loses this case, then they would have to supply that information or shut down. And every other pro-abortion state will go after every pregnancy center across this nation. So
I know that there's all kinds of technical nuance about whether or not the Pregnancy Help Center is going to the Supreme Court with an accusation against the Attorney General when it's really a state matter. And, that first they have to take it to the state and determine whether or not the subpoena was legal and then go to the Supreme Court. So there's nuance. It's not important. The important part, as I understand from you, John, and my reading on this matter, is that this or basically this demand, this subpoena that the New Jersey Attorney General has issued is basically going to intimidate all the people who have given or all the people who might give to this nonprofit to support their work and essentially try to run them out of business by undercutting their donor base.
And they tried that at the state level. For example, in California, they tried to get all of the names of the donors so that the pro-abortion forces could start attacking those individuals or those foundations or those businesses.
Right.
I mean, they're very ruthless about this. And sort of the what they're using as the basis for this is the APR, the Abortion Pill Reversal Protocol.
I see.
Again, it gets complicated, but here's the deal. Since Roe v. Wade ended, there's been a massive increase in selling abortion pills across state lines.
Of course.
And into states that are protecting human life, like Texas, for example, okay?
Right.
Well, Texas wants to fight back and say, no, you can't mail those stuff any more than you can mail child pornography over state lines. You just can't do it. So this is the larger battle. Now, the pro-abortion forces are saying, but the APR is rooted in deception. They're lying to women. But the fact of the matter is, the abortion pill has a 2-pill regimen. The first pill that they're given goes in and it basically kills the baby. And then a second pill forces the body to go into some sort of expulsions to expel that dead baby. And it's very dangerous, obviously to the baby, but obviously also to women because you're taking extraordinarily strong medicine here. But here's what we found, is after a woman takes the first pill and she changes her mind, and many women regret it, there is a way to counteract that first pill and basically stop the process and save the baby. About 7,000 babies have been rescued already through the abortion pill reversal protocol. It's just that it makes the pro-abortion forces angry, and they have said, it's bad medicine, it's this, it's that,
Yeah.
and it's all this false.
You're lying to people about its effects, whether or not it works or this and that. And the truth is, they actually are actively covering up the research that indicates that it actually is completely safe and does work.
Everything
So
about
they're actually
this, everything about this is projection. We've been deceiving women for years and years and years. So they accuse us of, and so they have been lying and deceiving people, including about the abortion pill, because right on the package of the abortion pill, it talks about how this pill is so strong that it can lead to sepsis and all kinds of infections and even death. And yet they've downplayed it throughout all of this process. They've taken doctors out of the situation. So they can just have this show up in your mailbox and deliver these little babies in your shower or your toilet. I mean, it's horrific. So anyway, that's the larger picture that's leading to the Supreme Court decision. And it is generally it's a broad attack against all pregnancy health services, of which a great portion of the Christian community has been responsible for starting them, paying for them, working in them, volunteering, investing, buying ultrasound machines, mentoring mothers, and been doing this for 50 years at no cost to the government. Now they're under attack.
Yep. Well, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, number one, we want to just look at these pregnancy help services, these pregnancy help centers or pregnancy resource centers, talk about why they exist, what they actually do, pull back the curtain on some of the misinformation that is provided about them, and then go back one last time at the end and figure out how we can pray for this Supreme Court decision and how people can get involved in the pregnancy help movement more deeply at your local locations.
The U.S. accounts for only 3% of the abortions that happen in our world each year, leaving 97% of the crisis before us as a world missions challenge. Would you join us in serving where the need is greatest? Passion Life, rescuing the most vulnerable where abortion is most concentrated.
We've received a really overwhelming and wonderful response to this tiny baby fetal model that we've developed here in Passion Life. This fetal model is a medically accurate representation from the 9th week after conception. If you go to our website, we've got a way for you to not only send those tiny babies around the world, but find out a way that you can have some of those tiny babies come to you for your own use as well. So John, we've talked a little bit about this upcoming Supreme Court case that's going to hear, basically, it is a defense of the existence, in some manner of speaking, it's a defense of the existence of the Pregnancy Help Resource Center that we have all across America. And it threatens the existence of the pregnancy help clinic movement. And by extension, it really threatens anybody, any Christian who has been involved in the pregnancy help movement by praying for or giving money to or volunteering at or encouraging in any way these pregnancy help resource centers. So it's very, very important that we as a community pray about this and get involved at any level that we can. But before we go into praying for those things and the specifics, let me ask you what a pregnancy help center does. Everyone knows about them, or maybe a lot of people know about them, but they don't know exactly what happens there or how it starts or what goes on in the day-to-day operations. So maybe you can just kind of begin to walk that through here.
Absolutely. So, and I know I'm talking about because, I started my first pregnancy help clinic, my wife and I, with 3 other couples from my own church back in Boston, Massachusetts. Back in 1991, we started organizing. We formed a little committee, and we started praying, and we started raising some friends, and we opened our first pregnancy center in 1992. And then we ended up opening 5 more over the following 10, 12 years. We opened them in Miami and other places. Now we're working to help open them in Vietnam and in Cuba and Colombia and all over the world. Right. So I have spent the last 35 years of my life really trying to help Christians and communities of churches learn how to respond to the moral crisis of abortion, particularly as a first responder. In other words, go find the women in your neighborhood and offer them life-affirming help. So that's what a pregnancy help center does. Here's a picture of the one we started in Miami back in 2007. It was in a part of Miami where Spanish is spoken there as much, if not more, than English. So it's pregnancy help or Clínica de Embarazo, and this one clinic has, rescued 50, 60, 70, 80,000 babies since it was started 15, 16 years ago. Wow. This next picture, this young mother and baby, is one of the first babies that were actually rescued at that pregnancy center in Miami. And then the other one next to it is this friend of ours in China who rescued this young mother and baby sitting at a McDonald's in Beijing.
Beijing, yeah.
So this was rescue that didn't really develop yet into a pregnancy help organized ministry, but it starts with individuals wanting to help other individuals, and then it just grows into an organized effort.
Exactly. Beautiful.
This next one is a second clinic in Miami, Heartbeat of Miami, which I was part of the team there that started this. And this was the dedication on the when they opened up their second one, Pregnancy Help Medical Clinic. So you may have seen signs like this. You may be supporting one locally, and if not, you should find out where the closest one is and support it. But here was the dedication, pastors coming out, donors, volunteers, all coming out to dedicate this new medical clinic along the way. Not only are the pregnancy centers primarily started by Christians with their own money and time and effort, and not only do they help women in general, but they also help young fathers as well. Many, many young fathers come into these centers. Some of them come in almost pushing and demanding that their girlfriends have an abortion. By the time they're done, they're starting to get a vision for being a provider and a protector. And it's a beautiful thing when you start to see the men step into their role as providers and protectors and say, I'm going to welcome my own son or daughter, and I'm going to become a good father. It's a beautiful thing. It's good for the whole culture.
Really good.
The last general thing I would say is that not only are they things that save innocent babies, and not only do they save mothers who are being pressured by their circumstances or by threats, but they also become an entry point for the gospel. Many, many women or couples come to know Jesus Christ and learn how to trust in him and depend on him through a pregnancy crisis center. Because as we like to say, when you help a woman save her baby, in the providence of God, the baby ends up saving the woman. Because you're really using the crisis as an opportunity for people to get to know the Lord, to learn how to pray, look to him for their daily bread. It becomes a life-changing experience when these Christians are involved with these young moms. And so here we see some pictures of women being baptized or being welcomed into the church. So what do they do specifically? Number one, they usually run a hotline of sorts. We just got back from China, and we just learned that there's a brand new hotline developing across China, and they're even using TikTok. Remember that?
They are using TikTok and using it well.
Exactly. They're interacting on TikTok, educating and informing and encouraging and connecting these women to local services. So that's
another place just added that I'll jump in. Argentina has really effectively used a national hotline for women in crisis. That's a place where a national hotline has been organized and put together, and it's very, very effective in Argentina.
Yeah. So they have phones, they advertise, they talk to women on the phone. We set one up. We would invite women who were considering abortion to come into our center and get a free pregnancy test and an ultrasound confirmation of pregnancy, because not just, some women will have a positive pregnancy test. It doesn't mean that you have a viable, intact uterine pregnancy and you're going to deliver a baby. Right. You might even be pregnant, but the baby may have signs of a fetal demise. So there are lots of good, healthy medical reasons that women confirm their suspicions of pregnancy with a pregnancy test and an ultrasound. So what do they do there? They provide a pregnancy test. They do some general education about what fetal development looks like. And so that's very, very common across the country to provide a pregnancy test and fetal education. Number 3, they provide in many, many places, probably at least half of the pregnancy centers in the country also offer a free ultrasound exam.
Right.
And it's very, very helpful to women to see their own baby. It takes everything out of the academic. It takes it out of the political. It even takes it out of the emotional, lets them to see their own child. For men especially, Mark, I'm telling you, when men see their own babies, something deep within
rises
them.
up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've seen men pressuring women to abort and start weeping when they see their own baby on the ultrasound.
Well, incidentally, John, isn't this exactly one of the points of contention that people like Elizabeth Warren raises, that in these pregnancy help centers, you've got non-medical people doing medically related things, and that's a malpractice? Isn't that part of the rub?
No, that's a false accusation, Mark, because all of these are licensed medical clinics according to the laws of their state, and they're provided by licensed medical professionals. So these are medical clinics. At least has this.
These are ultrasonographers, trained ultrasonographers doing
or
ultrasounds.
Nurses trained, or doctors directly. Right. We had a doctor in our case. And finally, they provide pictures and educational tools so that the mothers can take it back to their family and to begin to win their support. And then longer term, they provide classes to help mothers prepare to be good mothers and educate them, and to have an opportunity for people like you and me to provide help to these young mothers. So this is kind of the big picture. It's well worth supporting and is well worth defending at all costs. And I just would probably close by making an appeal that everyone watching this, you should ask yourself, of all the things that you give to, are you supporting this mission that is attacking the greatest moral evil of our time, the intentional killing of the most innocent children among us? And if you're not,
getting involved with your local pregnancy help center by praying for it, giving financially to it, volunteering, doing whatever you can to advocate for them is probably the easiest place for most people to jump into the pregnancy help movement.
That's right. And if you don't want to do it locally, or if you're already doing it locally and you're ready to take the next step, join us at Passion Life, because we're doing it all over the world. And we think it's one of the greatest movements of our time, leading people to love the innocent and to bring good news to the guilty in a way that glorifies God. So join us at passionlife.org.